couple of weeks, I found myself settling into a nice rhythm with the heart rate training. I know that I'm quite comfortable going up hills. I can maintain my heart rate going up the hills, no problem. And I'm also finding different ways of controlling my heart rate going downhill, where it tends to shoot up quite a lot. I found that if I'm a little bit lighter footed and I just keep my body as relaxed as possible, it keeps my heart rate under control. So there are a few little tips and tricks that I've been practicing when out on the open road to keep my aerobic heart rate under the 142. So I've been quite successful. It's not been too bad. But one of the most interesting things that I've actually found is how the mind and stress affects your heart rate. Now, because I've never measured my heart rate before, I've never been aware of the effect that my thoughts and my mindset has on my heart rate. And I think of myself as quite a relaxed person anyway. It takes a lot to get me angry and anxious. I'm normally quite relaxed anyway. However, the other day when I was doing a practice walk around the NSC, so I was on the flat going round, I was maintaining a heart rate of approximately 130, so it was quite a steady pace. And then I started to recap over the day's events, and I was doing this walk after work, and during the day I'd had not an angry conversation, but it was quite an emotional and heated conversation, shall I say, with some work colleagues during the day. So I was just recapping this over in my mind, and like I said, I wasn't anxious and I wasn't angry, but all of a sudden my watch, which was monitoring my heart rate, started beeping to say that I'd gone over my maximum aerobic heart rate. So I looked down and I was quite shocked that it had spiked up to 175. Now, my pace hadn't increased. I was keeping a steady pace. I hadn't done a surge of energy to push myself to go a little bit faster, which normally spikes the heart rate a little bit. It wasn't so windy, so I hadn't forced myself against the wind. The only thing that had changed was my thought process and rerunning the day's events, which, like I said, were a little bit heated, not angry. It wasn't fighting. It was just a heated emotional conversation. And normally, if I do push against the wind, or if I do push to go a little bit faster, my heart rate will spike. But as soon as I hold myself back a little bit, it'll drop fairly quickly. Within seconds, it'll come back down to my average heart rate again. But this time I literally had to come more or less to a standstill and wait for approximately, it took about 30 to 45 seconds, which feels an age when you're waiting for your heart rate to come back down to a nice even level. So 30 to 45 seconds for my heart rate to drop from 175 back down to the 142, and then down to approximately 130, which I was tending to keep it at. So I had been reading the honethezone section where he said, not only do you have to be aware of the equipment that you're using, your clothing, and the footwear that you're using, and be aware of overtraining, you also have to be aware of the stress in your life and the impact that the stress of your home life and your work environment, the impact that has on your training and your success in your events. Now, I'd never really thought about this as being something important and something that you should be aware of. But one of the things that I read in the honethezone book that I've been reading is that if you are under pressure at work, or you're busy in your home life with private matters, you can adjust your training schedule. So if you're training 4 or 5 days a week and it's coming up to a busy period in other areas of your life, don't feel bad at dropping that training down to maybe 3 days a week for a short period, because otherwise the stress of the training, the stress of the work and your home life, it can impact your health in such a negative manner. So that is part of what I suppose I can get carried away with sometimes. If I determine that I want to train 5 days a week to get a certain amount of mileage in, if I then become busy in other areas of my life, I would still force myself to go out and train even if I was feeling tired. Whereas now I'm being mindful of these other aspects of my life, and if it genuinely means, so it's not just me feeling lazy one day, but if it's a genuine case that I feel tired and lethargic due to other aspects of my life, then I'm training myself not to feel as guilty for taking a day off and resting, to ensure that I don't cause a negative impact on my health, and I can get the best out of my training when I do go out and about on the road. So yeah, it was incredible. You just learn things that you don't expect to learn about your body and your mind. And myself and Russell, we have been involved in meditation practices for quite a few years now. And even so, even though we do know the benefits of that, we'd never actually seen the impact that the mind could have on the heart rate, which obviously then has an impact on the overall body and how the body works. So yeah, that was something interesting that I thought I would share with you, because I do find it fascinating myself. So as I said before, I'm really enjoying my experiment with the heart rate training. I've already learnt so much already over the last couple of weeks, and I'm excited to continue the experiment and see what else I can learn. What I would say though, and what I've learnt very quickly, is that it's certainly a solo endeavour. At the moment, in order to keep my heart rate at the 142 aerobic average, I'm having to go approximately 2 minutes a mile slower in training than I would normally do. So whereas normally I would do a 13 or 13 and a half minute pace, I'm now doing between 15 and 15 and a half minute pace. So hopefully over time my speed will increase. But certainly at the moment, the people who I would go out and train with previously, they're unwilling and unable, I suppose, to train 2 minutes a mile slower, and there's no incentive for them because they're not doing the heart rate training. So I am finding that certainly at the moment I'm going out training on my own. Now over time, hopefully my speed will increase, allowing me to keep the same heart rate but go faster, and then I can start training with other people again. But actually I'm quite fine with that at the moment, because I do feel I'm experimenting with different aspects of the heart rate training. I'm trying to shorten my stride, like I said before, and experimenting with the speed and lightness of foot going up and down the hills. So at the moment I'm quite happy out training on my own, but like I said, over time I do hope that I can keep the same heart rate but get back to my average of 13 to 13 and a half minute pace that I was doing prior to this training. So all in all, a good few weeks, and I've definitely learned sufficient that I'm intrigued to carry on with the whole process and see what happens over the coming months. So thanks for watching and following along, and we'll be back with more videos in due course.